that deal. The White House is very hard to read. Do they want a deal or not?
Economy, it will certainly not be good for any economy to tariff each other and back and forth, reciprocal tariffs.
The trade dispute between the United States and Canada has reached a new level of intensity, with both sides preparing for a showdown that could reshape their economic relationship for years to come. The headlines have proclaimed President Donald Trump as the victor in this ongoing conflict, following Canada's decision to scrap a proposed digital services tax just hours before it was set to take effect. Trump reopened trade talks, claiming this as a major win. However, beneath the surface, the situation is far more complex, and the pressure is building in ways that could have lasting consequences. For months, Trump's administration has imposed tariffs on Canadian goods, with the automotive sector emerging as a primary target. Since March 2025, a 25% tariff on Canadian automobiles has disrupted a critical supply chain that connects the two nations. Canada exports around 85% of its automotive production to the U.S., with parts crossing the border up to 7 times before final assembly. The tariffs have created cost uncertainty, forcing U.S. automakers to pause new tooling programs, lay off workers, and even scale back operations. As of mid-2025, some facilities in Windsor, Ontario, Canada's auto manufacturing hub, had laid off as much as 50% of their workforce. The ripple effects are being felt far beyond the auto industry. The disruption has also caused delays in logistics and slowed down truck traffic, further complicating the flow of goods between the two countries. By April 2025, Canadian auto exports to the U.S. had dropped by 23% compared to the previous year, marking a sharp decline that continues to affect both economies. As the U.S. struggles with supply chain disruptions, Canada begins recalibrating its strategy. Prime Minister Mark Carney, facing mounting pressure from all sides, met with top executives from major Canadian automakers to explore ways to respond to the crisis. Behind closed doors, legal options and production shifts were discussed. One of the key sticking points in these talks has been Canada's zero-emissions vehicle mandate, which requires 20% of all passenger vehicles sold in Canada by 2026 to be electric or hybrid. However, automakers warn that this target is unrealistic. If the target isn't met, the Canadian government could be forced to purchase carbon credits or pay a hefty fee for charging infrastructure. This mounting economic pressure has led Carney to signal flexibility, but not surrender. He has also leaned into long-term reforms, aiming to dismantle interprovincial trade barriers and accelerate free trade agreements with Europe and Asia. These steps are intended to reduce Canada's dependence on the U.S., modeled after Australia's economic approach. The shift is not one of retreat, but repositioning. Canada is preparing to secure its economic future without relying on the United States. As the July 9th deadline approaches, when Trump's temporary tariff freeze is set to end, the situation becomes even more critical. If Canada does not make new concessions, more tariffs could be triggered, potentially targeting other sectors that have so far remained untouched. However, Carney has set his own deadline, July 21st. If no new trade deal is reached with the U.S. by that date, Canada is prepared to reintroduce retaliatory tariffs on U.S. goods, covering everything from agriculture to technology. The pressure is building on both sides, but the real question remains, who will blink first? As trade negotiations between the U.S. and Canada reach a critical juncture, the consequences of these tensions are beginning to manifest in everyday life, especially in regions that have long depended on cross-border trade and tourism. The impact is being felt most acutely in the Northeast U.S., where Canadian tourists, once a reliable economic boost, have disappeared. The ripple effect of Trump's tariffs on Canada has extended far beyond the halls of government to affect local economies and businesses across states like New York, Massachusetts, and Vermont. According to Massachusetts Governor Maura Healey, Canadian tourism in New England is down by as much as 60% compared to previous spring seasons. A significant number of school trips, which typically bring thousands of Canadian visitors to the region, have been canceled, and cross-border travel has dropped sharply. Regional carriers serving Logan Airport in Boston have reported declines in traffic, and local stores in popular tourist districts are seeing a decrease in revenue. This marks one of the first tangible victims of the trade war, the tourism sector. In Florida, a longtime magnet for Canadian winter visitors, tourism is also seeing steep declines. The impact on the U.S. economy goes beyond tourism. In April 2025, U.S. wine exports to Canada plummeted by 93% compared to the previous year, according to data from CBC News and the American Association of Wine Economists. Canada, traditionally one of the largest importers of U.S. wine, accounted for over one-third of the value of U.S. wine exports before the tariffs. The sharp drop in exports has led to a surplus of wine in California, where 93% of the nation's wine is produced. Without Canadian buyers, the price of U.S. wine has begun to fall, and U.S. wineries are facing a glut of unsold inventory. Beyond wine, broader economic pressures are emerging in both countries. In the U.S., the tariffs on Canadian aluminum and steel are being passed on to consumers, raising the cost of goods. A 2025 report from Massachusetts estimates that New England households could see a combined increase of $2.5 billion in heating costs over the next several years due to higher material costs. Small businesses across the U.S. are also feeling the pinch, as many are rethinking their reliance on Canadian suppliers and beginning to trim operations. In Canada, the impact is indirect but equally real. Supply chains that are heavily dependent on U.S. markets are beginning to feel the strain. Exporters are adjusting to bypass American ports, and consumers are seeing delays in shipments of goods. Canadian manufacturers, especially in industries like auto parts, are finding themselves caught in a tightening vice. This is no longer a dispute that only affects policymakers. It's an issue that is hitting ordinary workers, consumers, and local economies hard on both sides of the border. But while the public faces economic challenges, Prime Minister Mark Carney remains steadfast in his commitment to protect Canadian businesses. Canada is not merely responding to the tariffs with anger or retaliatory rhetoric. Instead, it is letting the economic damage speak for itself. The drop in tourism, the collapse in wine exports, and the rise in consumer costs are all clear indicators of the pain being caused by the ongoing trade dispute. Yet Carney's message has been one of measured resolve. If no deal is reached by July 21st, Canada will reintroduce tariffs on American steel and aluminum. As Carney sets his deadline, there is a growing sense of unease in both countries. The clock is ticking, and both sides are bracing for what could be a defining moment in their economic relationship. Will Trump back down, or will he press forward, confident that Canada will blink again, or perhaps has he overplayed his hand? By July 9th, when Trump's temporary tariff freeze expires, we may get our first answer, but the final verdict will come by July 21st, when Carney's patience may run out. As the clock ticks down to the July 21st deadline, Canada's strategic approach continues to evolve, signaling a potential turning point in its economic future. In a dramatic shift away from its reliance on the U.S., Canada has begun forging stronger ties with Europe, signaling to the U.S. that its patience is running out. In a move that caught the attention of the international community, Prime Minister Mark Carney signed a comprehensive strategic defense and economic partnership with the European Union during the NATO summit this summer. The deal, which covers defense procurement, critical minerals, LNG cooperation, and digital trade, represents Canada's desire to diversify its trade relations and reduce its dependence on the U.S. For Carney, a former central banker with a deep understanding of global markets and supply chains, the pivot towards Europe is a calculated one. By deepening ties with the EU, Canada is positioning itself as a global player with the ability to negotiate and collaborate with reliable partners who align with its values. The EU agreement also focuses on long-term economic resilience, with a focus on sustainable energy, critical minerals, and new digital infrastructure that could help Canada buffer against U.S. tariffs and market instability. This shift in strategy is not just a response to the U.S. tariffs, it's a deliberate repositioning of Canada on the global stage. Carney's message is clear. If the U.S. is unwilling to negotiate on fair terms, Canada will look to other partners to secure its economic future. The EU deal is part of a broader strategy to diversify trade relationships away from the U.S. and towards Europe and Asia. For Carney, this is a crucial step in shielding Canada from the long-term economic risks associated with its reliance on the U.S. market. The timing of this deal could not be more significant. Just days before Carney's meeting with EU leaders in Brussels, Trump was ramping up pressure on Canada with no signs of backing down. The U.S. president, who has repeatedly touted tariffs as an effective way to assert American interests, was pushing for more concessions from Canada. But Carney's response has been steady. He remains committed to ensuring that any trade agreement with the U.S. aligns with Canada's national interests without sacrificing fairness or economic sovereignty. While the U.S. continues its aggressive tariff campaign, Canada is moving forward with its own strategic agenda. The EU partnership isn't just a symbolic gesture. It's a move that has the potential to reshape Canada's economic future. Carney's leadership has been quietly but firmly positioning Canada for the challenges ahead, and the EU agreement is a clear sign that Canada is prepared to take control of its destiny on the global stage. The economic fallout from the U.S.-Canada trade dispute has already caused significant pain for businesses and consumers on both sides of the border. In Canada, the impact of U.S. tariffs on steel, aluminum, and other key industries is being felt across the manufacturing sector, with thousands of jobs lost and investment frozen. For U.S. businesses, particularly in agriculture, the consequences are equally dire, as tariffs on Canadian exports have disrupted supply chains and raised prices for consumers. With the clock winding down and both nations digging in their heels, the next few weeks will be pivotal. As Canada moves to expand its trade partnerships and strengthen its economic resilience, the U.S. must decide whether it will continue its confrontational approach or seek a new path forward. For Canada, the message is clear. It will not be pushed into a corner. If a fair deal with the U.S. cannot be reached, Canada is prepared to retaliate, and it will do so with a firm resolve. Ultimately, the trade dispute between the U.S. and Canada is no longer just about tariffs. It's about the future of global economic relationships, the power of alliances, and the resilience of nations in the face of economic adversity. As the deadline approaches, one thing is certain: the stakes have never been higher. The coming days will reveal whether Canada can continue its pivot towards Europe and Asia, or whether a new trade deal with the U.S. will finally bring an end to this escalating